So, hey, Mackenzie, how is it going tonight? So, this is our fourth episode. I don't know about you, but I've had so much fun recording these, and I look forward to doing so many more. I think this episode is going to be a lot of fun as well. So, what are your thoughts so far? Are you enjoying this process?
Yeah, it's been fun. It's definitely been a learning experience for I think both of us.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, it's been fun and learning how to edit on the back end and stuff. I'm over here prepping for my vacations, going to make sure that we get out the first episode while I'm gone. But yeah, it's been good so far, I think.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, I mean, we can relate this back to a beginner with their health journey, right? So, like, you have to learn on the way, on the journey, right? And you're going to stumble and fall and make mistakes. And we are definitely not perfect at this, and we have a lot to learn from this, and we'll get better with more practice. And that's, the same type of thing, whether it's your first time ever working out or first day on your health journey, you're going to learn as you go. So, it's going to be a lot of fun. So vacation, where are you going on vacation?
I'm going back to Costa Rica.
Costa Rica.
I Yeah, I lived there a few years back and it was one of the best experiences of my life. It's probably my favorite place in the whole world. And so I haven't taken a vacation in probably like since I lived there, to be honest. Like traveled and stuff, but I've always been working, so like I haven't had time to like actually chill and unwind and reset. So it was much needed, much overdue. So taking a whole week, gonna unplug, gonna chill, hike some waterfalls, hang at the beach, and just have a good time.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I've never been to Costa Rica. What's your favorite part about it? You said it's one of your favorite places ever.
I don't know, it just holds such a special place, just emotionally. Like it's hard to explain, but I'll try to keep this brief. But me and my friend traveled there a while back just for a quick vacation and I fell in love. And, typically when you come back from vacation, you have that like depression or you're upset. You're like, oh, I want to be back. I want to come back to reality. But
Right.
for me, it hit hard. Like it was full on depressed, like not stop thinking about it. I just felt this weird tie that I need to be there. And so that's when I said, fuck it, I'm just going to pack up and move there and live there for a little bit. And so I did that a few months after. And yeah, other than that, it's just this deep emotional tie because obviously it was very nerve-wracking going there alone and living there solo, not really speaking the language super well or anything, but it was just a really cool growing experience and obviously was able to experience a lot of cool, like, activities and, like, sights and stuff while I was there, so it was just overall an incredible experience and something that I'll never forget, so I'm really excited to go back.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. I don't know if I could have done that. I mean, just to move out there, not know anybody, and a totally different culture, I'm sure, and that's awesome. That's probably one of really cool experiences in your life.
Yeah, it was terrifying, but and granted, took me like probably a few days to just let myself get out of my hostel and like go out and explore because I was so anxious and nervous. But those are the type of things you got to force yourself into, and you just slowly overcome each fear step by step, kind of like how we're doing this podcast, kind of like anything in life. So yeah, I'm excited for that. But what do you got going on?
Well, as we're recording this, it is almost Halloween, and so I'm actually going to be carving pumpkins after this, which I love. It's such great. And my girls are older now, so it's still pretty cool that they want to carve pumpkins and they want to go trick or treating with us and walk around the neighborhood. So looking forward to that. And then all the candy, of course. I'm not a huge candy guy, but I do love. I mean, I could have dark chocolate anytime, any kind of dark chocolate. What about you? Is there any candy like around Halloween or that you love?
Honestly, I'm not too much of a candy girl either. It's too hyper sweet to me. Maybe just my palate has adjusted to less sweet things over time. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan. I more so go for like cookies.
Yeah,
That's my go-to.
I'm the same. I think it's funny too because like someone might say, "Oh, you don't eat candy, you don't like sweets, like you're just not like any of us." It's not that. It's a lot of times like if we went trick or treating and they had like cinnamon rolls and blueberry muffins and brownies and chocolate cookies, I'd probably bring my own bag. Like I love that kind of stuff. Like candy bars, that is, it's just your personal preference.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's not that we don't enjoy that kind of stuff. It's just we pick and choose.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Well, that being said, we're talking about kind of a hot topic today that everyone seems to have an opinion on, which is diets. And not just any diet, we're talking about the diets that have names, the ones that promise fast results but often leave you feeling frustrated and probably pretty hungry. So, I want to ask everyone a quick question. How many times have you tried a diet that sounded great at first, but by week 3, you were completely over it? I know that I talk to a lot of people every day who have gone through the cycle many times, and it's one of the most common themes that comes up on calls is just going through that vicious on-off cycle, not knowing how to properly approach diet to see the results that you actually want. And I think that diet is arguably one of the biggest components to seeing results, and it can also be the most confusing with all the conflicting information out there, especially around what type of diet is best. So, we want to break down why these fad diets don't work long term and then explore what actually makes up a good sustainable diet that you can actually stick with.
Yeah, so let's kind of start off. Let's define what fad diet is. And so we're talking about diets that usually have those catchy names like keto or paleo or Atkins or intermittent fasting, or really, I mean, any of the latest and greatest TikTok diet, right?
I don't
So
even want to
it's,
know what's going on over there.
yeah, I think there's something new every day, right? Hard to keep up with. But and the thing is, it's you see someone on social media, a friend of yours, or just someone that you follow, and they have these great results. And so, of course, you're like, oh, I want to do what they're doing. I want to get their results, and a lot of time it's either a quick fix or something that's just not very sustainable. And those people end up gaining that weight back, or they have issues with food just in general. And so there's just a lot that goes along with that. So usually if it has some kind of name, that's kind of a red flag that it could be just more of a promotional thing, and not think something that's going to be actual sustainable for the rest of your life.
Yeah, for sure. The best diet for you doesn't have a name. It doesn't fall into a specific category, at least most of the time. And that's not to say that these diets don't work for some people. Like some people can see success with them. But I think most of the time, the issue where we have, and that's why we're bringing this up, is just the sustainability piece.
Right.
These
Yeah.
diets often promise fast results with rules that are super restrictive or very specific, cutting out entire food groups or entire macros, and you may see some quick success, but the problem is what happens after that. And like you said, you gain the weight back, or typically most people do. And I'd say it's also just hard to fit that into daily life with events or just how you want to live your life because we don't want it to be feeling miserable. I know I was talking to someone the other week about keto. I mean, this comes up fairly frequently on calls, but she specifically said she tried keto and she was miserable the entire time she was on it. That is an immediate red flag to me because the best diet is one that you can see yourself doing long term, and you should never feel so restricted or so miserable. That just means that it's not the right thing for you and you need to reevaluate. So, diet isn't supposed to be miserable and restrictive, it's just a way of eating. And so, we're trying to flip the script and give you like, what is the actual diet that you should be following that doesn't fall under these sort of guidelines that leave you miserable or hungry or irritable?
Yeah, and you had said the other day, I guess you said you should never feel so restricted to the point where you are miserable. I love that. And I was thinking too, a lot of times I feel like people go into a diet or they start a diet as a punishment
Mm.
for something that for the lifestyle that they're living or that they lived recently. And that's just going to end in you hating yourself or hating the diet or hating the actions. And it's not going to be something that you're going to want to keep doing. As opposed to going into it saying, okay, I want to take care of myself. This is going to be for self love. I want to make sure that I'm healthier, that I feel better. This is for myself, my friends, my family. What am I going to do to help me become healthier and live a healthier lifestyle? I think that's a huge mindset difference.
Yeah, for sure. I think that applies to any area of fitness too. You don't want to go in purely as a way to punish yourself or because you hate yourself. I think oftentimes it's good to start from a place of, yeah, I'm not happy with where I'm at. Obviously, that's the reason why you want to change, but going and trying to beat yourself into the ground and punish yourself or restrict yourself because you hate that is just a losing battle because it's just going to continue to send you down a negative spiral and you're not approaching it from the right reasons. It at least needs to shift. Once you get the momentum going, we need to make that shift to taking care of yourself, focusing on eating to fuel your body, to take care of your body, to be strong, to show up as that best version of yourself. And I think that'll make a big difference.
Yeah, yeah, definitely for sure. So have you tried any of these, Mackenzie?
I have not. I don't know how I got out of that, but I have not specifically gone through any of like the keto, paleo, carnivore, any of that. I did do an elimination diet at some point, but that's a little bit of that's a whole other topic, which we'll get into at another point. But no, I personally haven't. How about you?
So I've never tried any of them like full on, like 100% followed it to the T. I've done parts of it, And sometimes it's just the way it works out. Like part of your nutrition plan or my diet is it sounds kind of like keto. Like I tend to eat more meat than I do, carbs type of thing. Or I've tried intermittent fasting one time, just the way my schedule worked. I didn't eat, I would stop eating at 8 or 9 at night, and then I ate again, 9 in the morning. So I had like a 12 hour, but I don't know if I could ever do like a 24-hour fast. I like eating way too much. I was thinking about that too. I think there are parts of these diets that work really well. And so I think what you need to do is you look at it and say, okay, what works with my lifestyle, and what part of this, would really that I could get into and I could follow the rest of my life.
Yeah, definitely. It's all about finding what works best for you.
Yeah.
And I've definitely talked with a lot of clients on this too. And like I said, it's a recurring thing that comes up on calls. And a lot of people will tell me, yeah, I did keto in the past and it worked really well, but now I'm stuck here again. And so I always like to question, I'm like, okay, you say it worked in the past, but now you've gained the weight back maybe and more. Did it
Yeah.
actually work? Because for it to work, we want long term something that you can actually see you doing as a lifestyle. So that's always something I like to challenge people on and just have you think a little bit different. Like, did it actually work if you can't maintain it or if you aren't still maintaining it now or aren't seeing the results you want?
And I think that's the key. Can you maintain it long term? There's a lot of things you can do that are not very healthy for you, but can help you lose weight very quickly. But they're not going to be sustainable, and they're just not healthy for you in general. So yeah, it may have worked for a couple weeks, but like you said, can you maintain this long term? And I always like to think about, can you maintain this for the rest of your life? I mean, that's ultimately a goal, right? You should be looking forward to spending this health journey forever.
Yeah, that should be the check when you're going through or starting a new plan or diet is like, could I see myself doing this forever? Not that you're going to do it forever. Obviously, things are going to change as your life evolves, but that should be the mentality. It should be something that you can enjoy and sustain long term. And that's going to be a good qualifying check to make sure that you're on the right track with whatever you're eating or whatever plan that you're on.
Yeah, and you tweak and modify it as your life changes. But yeah, you're right. Long term,
Exactly.
sustainability, maintain that long term.
Yeah. And like I said before, too, these diets may have a place, may work really well for you. That's awesome. I'm not saying that they're entirely bad. Like you said, you can pick pieces of it and find what works best for you. But for the vast majority of people, that's what we're talking about. It doesn't work just because of the sustainability piece. I really think that's all what it comes down to. And like we're about those lifelong permanent results. And I think a lot of people can get into that mindset of if they don't follow it strictly or if they even deviate from the plan a little bit, you feel like you failed. And that also leads into that yo-yo effect of losing weight, gaining it back. So you go off the diet only to try another one later on. So just it's that vicious cycle. And it's just not designed for your entire lifestyle. So we don't want to go through that cycle anymore because the more you go through that cycle of losing weight and gaining it back, it makes it harder and harder to actually lose the weight. And then you get more discouraged and there's that mental stress of worrying about what you can and can't eat. So there's just a whole lot that goes on behind closed doors there. And so we want to break that all or nothing mindset and make sure that it's working for the long haul.
Yeah, and I mean, there are so many stressors in life as it is. The last thing we need is to add more stress to our life by trying to do something that it should be healthy.
For sure. So, having said, we've established that fad diets don't often work. So, what does? And the truth is, I think it's a lot simpler than most people make it out to be. It doesn't need a fancy name, it doesn't need extreme restrictions. It just needs a few key elements that support your health and that are sustainable for the long term. So, that's what we're going to break out today. Like, what is the best diet for you to follow?
Yeah. So the first thing, let's talk about prioritizing whole foods, right? I think if that is just the number one, maybe only thing you work on right now, I mean, I think you'd be amazed at some of the differences you'd see in the way you feel, how your body responds. So, I mean, junk foods, they're basically created, right? There's a lot of lab work created to get you hooked, to get you wanting to eat more. And they sometimes they'll override those body signals. And a lot of times they're heavier in calories. They don't fill you up. They're not very satiating, right? Instead, you want to eat a majority of real foods. We're not talking about 100% every single thing you eat, because that's almost impossible. But the majority of what you eat comes from whole foods, right? So What that means is things that don't necessarily come in a box or a bag in a box type of thing. When we go to a grocery store, I think one thing to think about is staying in those vegetables, fruit, meat aisles, usually around the edges of the grocery store. They design that for a purpose to get you to buy certain foods in there. But if you stick to those, that's going to help out for sure. Like I said, vegetables, fruits, meats, those type of things, the things that you can get from the ground most of the time. Again, we're not talking about perfection. We're never talking about perfection. And there are definitely times where some processed foods can be very valuable. But if the majority of the time you eat whole foods, I think you'll feel a big difference.
For sure. I think that helps. One, with just how you're feeling and performing, like you said, but you're also gonna naturally eat less without feeling like you have to sacrifice. So, if your goal is weight loss and you need to be in a deficit, it's gonna make the process a hell of a lot easier because you feel satiated, you feel full, and you don't feel like you're super hungry or restricting yourself all the time. And you're also going to naturally avoid a lot of the common pitfalls that come with processed foods, like the added calories, added sugar, artificial sweeteners, all that kind of stuff. So I think when you focus on whole foods, you're automatically making better choices for your health without having to obsess over the calories or track every detail or macro, anything like that.
Yeah, the side note too, I was thinking, I think you'd be amazed at how, we talked about how satiating, how full, just eating whole foods, extremely full you get compared to a meal that you had a combination or mostly processed food. I just think you'd be amazed. It really does make your body feel better.
Yeah, because I'm sure we've all been through that where you have, I don't know, like a bag of chips or a dessert or a burger or something, and then you feel hungry like 30 minutes or an hour later. It's because like, it's not like high volume foods. And so if you're choosing whole foods over that, like you're gonna feel full, for hours and hours. I can eat my first meal and then go basically all day without eating if I'm not careful, just because of like how much volume and how many nutrients are in there.
Yeah, and your body responds better to it. You just feel better in general. You have better energy. You won't have those crashes throughout the day. And we could go on and on about that.
Yeah. So if you do anything to focus on diets, just focus on whole foods. That's going to take you, I swear, most of the way there. But step two in the best diet is going to be tracking your macros. Now, I'm not saying you need to track every single calorie you eat the rest of your life, but being aware of what you're eating is super important. And I think that having experience tracking is something everyone should do at some point in their life for like a certain period of time, because most people don't realize how easy it is to consume extra calories from sauces, drinks, snacks, and tracking just helps highlight what you're actually eating, what's in your food, how much you need. You got to learn what's in your food and what your body needs in order to make those better decisions and like eat intuitively going forward.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, everyone I think should do it every now and then, even if you're like, hey, I feel great, I love where I'm at, just to kind of get a baseline and get an idea and kind of a checkup of where you are. I'll do that every now and then. I don't track every single day, but every now and then I'll pull that out, track that for a couple weeks, just to make sure that I'm where I want to be. It's amazing sometimes, like, oh wow, I'm not eating as much as I should, or I'm eating too much of this item, or not enough of this item. So it's good. You have that data in front of you, and it's not going to lie. You know what it is, and you can make adjustments and improvements with those numbers and with that information.
Yeah, I go through those cycles too. Generally, I like to track just because I love data, I love numbers, I love structure, we established in the past episodes. But I really enjoy tracking, but I also make sure I force myself to go into that intuitive, just so like I don't get too obsessed and like obsessed with every single number and making sure everything's on point. But right now, I am in a phase where I'm tracking because I had more specific fitness goals. So it's great, if you have a very specific goal or you're trying to get to a certain body fat, it makes things foolproof because you know exactly where you're at and where you need to be to make sure you're seeing the results you want. Then, like you said, sometimes it's good just to check yourself if you've been eating intuitively for a while to be like, hey, like, where am I? Am I getting in enough protein? And then it highlights what areas you're doing great and what areas you may need to improve on. And I think it's funny every time clients like start with us, they think they're eating one thing and then they start tracking and their eyes are open. They always like send us a message like, wow, I did not realize either how much of this I was eating or how little of protein I was eating. It can be
Yeah.
very eye-opening once you actually have the tangible data to show what you're consuming and what's in your food.
Yeah, and there's a few items out there that I get a lot of comments on, like something like peanut butter, for example. They're like, "Oh, I've been eating this amount of peanut butter," and then they have to actually weigh it or measure it, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is like two or three times what they say on the back of the bottle, right? The serving size." And so it is eye-opening, and it definitely helps you to understand what you're eating every day.
Yeah, that one gets a lot of people. Once especially just any processed food really, like, you don't realize what the actual serving size is compared to what people normally eat, because 'cause we're used to just, sitting and eating a bag of chips, and you don't realize how many that actually is.
Yeah.
And so, how do we go about tracking? If that's something that you haven't done, the best way to do this is going to be tracking food for a few weeks, and you can use an app like MyFitnessPal for this. This is what we use with clients. There's a lot of other apps out there too, but that's just kind of the standard go-to. And this basically ensures that you're seeing progress you want in the right direction, like I said. So, a fundamental key to, I guess, first things first, we need to define like what your goals are. So that's step one. You need to figure out what you actually want to achieve. Do you want to lose weight? Do you want to lean out? Do you want to build muscle? That's going to be step one. And then from there, if you want to lose weight, you need to be in a caloric deficit. That's just period, end of story. That's the fundamental key to weight loss, is consuming less than you expend in a day. So to ensure you're in a deficit, you're going to track your food intake. You're going to use a macro calculator to get a baseline for where you're at. You can just go and Google one. You'll put in some basic information, and it'll spit you out a number. And then from there, you've got to test that. So you're going to hit that goal consistently, and you're going to log your daily weigh-ins. And if you notice over time, and this, we got to look at the macro, like a couple weeks at least, to like see the trends of data. If your weekly average weight trends down, that means you are in a deficit, that number that you're at. So you're good. If you want to lose weight, you can continue to stay there and your weight will trend down. And then you can kind of just adjust from there based on what your goals are. Eventually, like, it will level out again. You'll need to either lower it if you still want to continue to lose, or if you're good and you want to bump that up, you can go back to maintenance or above. But that's generally the overview on how you track. Is there anything else that you want to add to that? I don't know if I explained that the best
Yeah,
way.
no, you did well. I was just going to add too. A lot of times, what we like to see as well with our clients, we want to see what they're eating without changing anything.
Hmm.
Those first couple weeks, don't change anything. We want to see what you're currently eating, and then that helps us to make a way better, more individualized decision on should we be adding calories, should we be taking away calories. Someone just asked you, well, how many calories should I have taken in? I don't know. That data really helps us. Otherwise, it takes a lot of the guessing out of the game.
Yeah, for sure. That is a very important point. Like, you want to track, get a few weeks of baseline, and just get familiar with tracking too, and make sure that you're tracking accurately. And then from there, you'll use the calculator to see what that number gives you compared to what you actually have been eating. Then you can make the informed adjustments going forward.
Yeah. All right. So the big word we always love talking about is protein, right? Yes. So we're gonna keep talking about this probably forever. So protein is so very important in so many ways. It's going to be that building block of muscle tissue, right? You're going to build. We need protein. We need a lot of protein to build and maintain that muscle mass. So the more muscle mass, the more calories you're going to burn naturally. We're talking about revving up that metabolism. I was thinking about, I actually wrote it down because I don't make sure I don't mess it up here. But I was thinking about, and I heard this somewhere, so I didn't make this up, but they were describing metabolism like a car engine, right? And so think about a fast metabolism as like that big, powerful engine of a super race car type thing that burns a lot of fuel. And here we're going to think about fuel like being calories. So even when you're resting, it's going to burn a lot of fuel. So, and then in contrast, if you have a slower metabolism, it's kind of like having a really fuel efficient engine, which is going to use way less fuel, even when you're active. All right. And so you want just a super revved up, let's burn those calories, burn that fuel type of engine. So when you build that muscle, which you're going to need protein to build that muscle, it's like upgrading your engine. It's like getting a super powerful engine for your awesome race car now, right? So it's going to be a stronger one. Bigger engine needs more fuel. And then just like that, your body needs more calories to function. And so that's why protein combined with strength training works so well for boosting our metabolism. So it increases your muscle mass, which is going to help you burn more calories, similar to how a stronger engine is going to consume more gas. So the first time I heard that, I thought it was excellent, a really good way of describing that. So protein is going to speed up metabolism. It's also the most satiating macronutrient, which means you're going to feel fuller longer throughout the day. We always recommend trying to get at least a gram protein per pound of target body weight. And that's, on a higher end. That also gives you a little more leeway if you don't quite get that goal every single day.
Yeah, and one thing I'll say too is you don't necessarily need to get up there right away. If that's like way above what you're used to eating, work your way up to it. That's going to be the target. That's where we want to get you to, but you don't need to get there. You don't need to go 0 to 100. Speaking of the car analogies, just you work your way up, and that's going to be the end goal that you want to get to. But you got to have the data, you got to track it. Going back to what we said about tracking macros. And kind of speaking of that too, I want to go back really quick and just mention fat and carbs too, since we didn't mention that in the macro piece. I really want most people to just worry about calories and protein. That's what we always start clients with first. And then once you get more advanced, once you are super in tune with your body and really consistent, then you can really work on the carbs and fat. But for now, that's not really something that most people need to worry about.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I do like the car analogy too. I'm into cars in general, so I like that. And I feel like there's such good parallels between fitness and the cars too.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's a good one. So, part number 4 to the best diet is going to be finding balance. Now, what does that mean? This means kind of going back to what we said earlier, you should never feel so restricted to the point where you are miserable in your diet. The key to long-term success is being able to enjoy life along the way. This means going out to dinner, going on date night with your husband or wife, going to parties, having a night out, taking vacation. That's what I'm doing next week. And I'm not going to stress about a single thing while I'm there, by the way. But whatever it is, like we want to be able to do those things without worrying about getting derailed. Because when you're locked in a majority of the time, events like that are no brainer. And that's just a part of life. That is what makes life good, is those kind of experiences. And so we want to make sure that you can enjoy those. And you're just making good choices where you can and not letting one day spiral you out of control.
Yeah, and going back to our word consistency that I like to use a lot. If you're consistent with this most of the time, those days are just going to make things better in your life. They're just going to add, value to your life. You don't want to have to go out to dinner and be stressed out about what you're eating. You should be go out to dinner and enjoy that time with your friends, family, whoever you're with at that time. So next day, you're back on your regular plan.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what I always tell clients too. And they go on vacations or events. I'm like, cool, don't worry about anything, enjoy it. And then we'll get back to it tomorrow or whenever they come back. And I guess it would be good to mention kind of how I'm approaching my vacation too, because when I'm in Costa Rica, I am not going to track a single thing. I'm not going to go to the grocery store and meal prep. I'm going to eat out every single meal. I'm not going to go to the gym either. It's going to be my deload week. So it's a full vacation for me, but I'm also not stressing about anything. I've been so dialed in with my training and nutrition lately, especially. I'm just feeling so good and so confident and seeing a lot of great changes, probably to like the best point I ever have in my life. But I'm still not worried about losing progress because everything is so automatic. And I know that I've been on point up to this point. And so it's going to do me well to just de-stress and let myself enjoy my trip and not worry about all these details. And I know what choices to make when I'm eating out. I know I'm going to stay active, like hiking and surfing and stuff. So it's a no-brainer. Like I said, you just got to have something that's going to work for you long term and be able to enjoy life along the way.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right, and another thing, part five that we talked about is listening to your body. I find that a lot of people really have a hard time being aware of how their body responds to things. There's typical things out there that if you eat, you're not going to feel great the next day. But sometimes we get in such a big pattern that you stop recognizing that and realizing how our body is responding to it. So if you're not feeling good, or you have digestive issues, or if there's just things that don't seem normal, that's your body telling you, hey, you know what we're eating is not quite working for me. I don't love this. And so listening to our body, I think, is so important. So just the things we eat every day, we need to kind of connect those dots to how we feel. And I think we've talked about before, a lot of times when we have clients that have issues, one of the things we ask about is what kind of food are you eating, or what is there anything new to your diet? Is there anything that you added recently, or for sure is bothering you when you eat that, or if there's any past history type of thing too. So I mentioned this earlier, but experimenting with the foods you eat, you kind of monitoring and tweaking and adjusting and just looking at it and say, okay, how does my body react to this? How do I feel when I eat these type of foods? And I think that's so very important, but so often overlooked.
Very much so. I think vast majority of people live life day to day and some sort of like chronic pain or discomfort or just dealing with issues that could be solved just from listening to your body and eating the right kind of foods for you. Even just like bloating and digestion. A lot of people like that's the norm for them is poor digestion, having issues with that. And they don't realize that it just comes down to food, or same with just energy and hitting a midday wall. or even just like acne or chronic joint pain. Like, there's a lot of things that come specifically from food. And that's why we say first thing we look to with clients is food. When there's an issue, I'm like, all right, let's dive into what you're eating. Let's see what the culprit is. Because a lot of people just go day to day without realizing like how much of an impact that has. So that's why it is so important to one track and then start to listen to your body's feedback, because it is always communicating to you and it's just up to you to listen.
Yeah. So kind of a good general statement: eat more foods, right, that your body thrives off of. Avoid ones that your body does not love. You can feel that for sure.
Yep. And key is finding the optimal foods for your own body too, because no two people are the same and will be able to eat the same foods. So
Right.
just because your friend has a certain reaction or whatever happens, that doesn't mean it's going to be the same for you. So you got to listen to yourself. And that's also why we never tell people exactly what to eat. We just need to help them observe and learn what works well for them. So that way, you can notice if you feel bloated or sluggish, get pain, acne, do you feel energized, is the digestion good? Like, you've got to pay attention. And I guess that kind of ties into what I was saying earlier, how I went through an elimination diet. I wouldn't consider that a fad diet. So that's more of like a very specific approach to get certain data. Essentially, it's resetting your body, because when you eat the same things over and over, your body adapts and does the best you can, which is why a lot of people don't realize that they have issues with food, because their body's just adapting and doing the best it can with the food that you're giving it. So in doing an elimination diet, basically you're resetting your body and then you go in and test individual foods to see the true reaction. And for me, that was super eye-opening. And that is what ultimately allowed me to get off my medication, like help with my mental health and all sorts of other things. So food really does have a lot of power. Now, you don't necessarily need to go and do an elimination diet. I just figure that's important to highlight how much of an impact it does have on how you feel day to day.
Very much so.
So, bottom line, the best diet, let's recap what we talked about. So, the best diet is one, sticking to majority of whole foods. Step two is tracking your food to understand what you need, what's in your food, having that data. Step three is getting in your protein. Step four is having that balance, making sure that it's something that you can sustain long term and something that you can enjoy and fit within your actual lifestyle. And step five is listening to your body's feedback. What is working for your specific body? Pay attention, because it's always communicating. So stick to those five things, and I guarantee that will take you like 99% of where you want to be in your fitness journey, at least when it comes to nutrition. So, anything else you want to add or wrap up there?
No, I mean, this is a fun topic. There's a lot involved, but just got to get out there and, like you said, find something that works well for you, that's sustainable, and that you can do forever.
That's the key. Well, cool. If you guys want to connect with us, you can find us on socials. We will link that in the show notes. And then the best place to connect is going to be our private community. We run all kinds of challenges, giveaways, calls, new content every day, and it's completely free to join. I will put that link in the notes as well. And we'll see you guys next week.